to show you guys a video on YouTube. So you'll be seeing a little bit of toggling, but for the most part, we're going to be working from this PowerPoint here. So welcome again. Thank you for coming. This is our first in a series of virtual education sessions here at Bangor Public Health with our substance use prevention team. This one is titled, Where is the User's Manual? We're going to be looking at that parenting, adolescent brain development, and substance use prevention. Some quick introductions. First of all, hi, my name is Brianna. I'm one of the public health educators here with Bangor Public Health. I have my two kids here on the screen. I am a somewhat new parent to teens. My son is turning 14 here in less than a month. He's an 8th grader. And I didn't make sure to include my daughter in there. She's going to be turning 10 next month. So not quite at the teen years, but she's working her way up there. I have been working with teens for about I was trying to think back, about 19 years now. So I have only been parenting them for a little bit amount of time, but I have been working with them for a while. My co-host tonight is Robin, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hey, I'm Robin Carr, and I work with Brianna, and I'm just going to be here supporting her with the tech element tonight. But these are my two, well, a teen and a young adult. So I have parented through the teen stages, and I now have a 20-year-old, and I also have a 15-year-old. Thanks, Brianna.
Thank you. So a poll time real quick. You're going to see a little poll pop up on your screen, and I'm asking you, who are you parenting? What are the ages of your kids? So here we have some different age groups. You can pick multiple ones. And if you're through your parenting journey and you're just looking for this as a resource, go ahead and do that 18+. Awesome. Thank you so much. And then also in the chat, I'm going to stop sharing those. And thank you. So we have lots of spreads. We have some little ones, we have some medium ones, and we got some big ones here. Then in the chat, what is a word that you would use to describe how you're feeling about parenting your teen? Maybe right now, in the past, does it have that quarantine flavor, the COVID flavor on it? What are some things, or what's a word to describe how you're feeling about your parenting right now? Uneasy. Oh yeah, most definitely. Complicated and challenging. Yes, yes. Everything just has that extra layer of challenge right now. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. I think you guys really captured some of the things that scary. Yeah, absolutely scary. I think you guys are really capturing some of those feelings that we're all kind of internalizing right now with what's going on in our own worlds and in the world at large and in our communities. Things are just a little uneasy right now. We're a little unsure. We feel a little shaky. And that can really come out in our parenting, and also it can come out in our teens and how they're feeling, how they're reacting, and some of the behaviors that they're displaying. What we find is when we're parenting our teens, it kind of feels a little bit like a tug of war, because right now, as a teen, their main job and their role in their life, they're trying to figure out how to become independent so that hopefully they're ready to care for themselves and make good decisions as they become young adults. Our job as their parents is to keep them safe during that process. Sometimes that feels like a really big tug of war. Sometimes they have some added strength on their end. Things like their friends, school, media, social media, all feels like it's tugging them away from our center. And we're really trying to gain that strength to bring them back to center and come back and have a really good, healthy balance. But it is definitely a tug of war with what they're trying to accomplish and how do we keep them safe. So we're all thinking, why? Why is my teen acting this way? It's really easy. It's biology. It's really easy. So thinking about some of those things that we see, the common traits in our teens' behavior. Sometimes they have a difficulty holding back or controlling their emotions. Sometimes they'll prefer to do those more high excitement. They start exploring some new activities. They get a little bit more risk taking. They're not planning adequately. They don't have great judgment, it seems like. And they're going to be a little bit more impulsive. That's why it's really, it helps to understand where in the brain does this responsibility lie? Where in the brain is this all working? So all of those experiences really help shape that new gray matter in their brain. And they're using a strategy called use it or lose it. So everything that's happened in their brain up until now as a teen has kind of built some neural pathways, and now their brain is going to start figuring out what they need to keep and what they can get rid of. So this structural reorganization does continue until our teens are about 25. And we do see more changes throughout life. So it doesn't just stop at 25, but the big chunk of changes is happening from teens to 25. These are all going to play a significant role in shaping our teens' behavior. So in other words, there is a really big biological reason as to why teens act the way they do. So to answer the question, where in the brain, here we have a little brain diagram up there. So the parts of the brain that develop, the first parts, start in the back and on the bottom. Those are going to be controlling our physical activity. So our cerebellum, our amygdala controls our emotions, and our motivation is coming from the hypothalamus. This part right in the front here, our prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for our impulse control, our reason, thought, good judgment, this all happens later. So that's our voice of reason. It develops last. So that's why our teens, you're like, what were you thinking? They weren't. That part of their brain isn't there yet. It's still developing. It's building those neural pathways. So it's easier to understand why our teens are driven more by emotion, excitement, short-term reward. They can't think long-term. Everything's right here, right now. So that's leading to some of our unpredictable and we know sometimes risky behavior. So I'm going to do, I hope you can see me. I'm going to do a little thing here with my fist. My hand is going to be in my brain. So here my little thumb is our amygdala. So if you can see that on the diagram, that's kind of in the midbrain. And this is the part of our brain that reacts when we perceive a threat, even if it's only stress instead of actual danger. There is no thought in that part of our brain when it's activated. It's all reaction. Developing strong emotions is such as anger, sadness, fear. Then I'm going to close my fingers over my little thumb amygdala. That's going to represent our prefrontal cortex. This is our thinker brain. This is where our organized thought, self-regulation, focus are found. So when we're in our calm state, this fist mode is gently sitting on top of our amygdala. Our brain can think clearly. However, as soon as our brain or our child perceives a threat, it can be a threat of, I'm not going to get my way, being told no, I can't get something to work right, our brain flips. And now our amygdala, that reaction, is in charge. There is no thought here. If you have a child or a teen whose brain is in the flipped mode, there is no amount of reason that is going to get through to them. You need to get them to slowly regulate to get back to their thinking brain. A really big part of this also that is sometimes missed is our teens need sleep. This is such a key part of brain development. It is thought that our teens need about 9 to 10 hours of sleep, although we know that most of them do fall short. And the problem here lies with their circadian rhythms are starting to kind of shift a little bit. It makes sense that because their circadian rhythm is shifting, they want to sleep later and stay up later. However, we know due to our normal standard schedule, classes, early busing, they're having to get up earlier than their body really wants to. What we're going to find is that sleep deprivation kind of gradually builds up over the week, and they're going to become more problematic, more tired, have that deficit the later in the week that they get. That's going to exacerbate their moodiness, their cloudy decision making. So also remembering that the brain needs that sleep to develop. That's when, during sleep, that's when that critical reorganization is happening. Our kids need their sleep. So it's really important to remember with our teens to make sure they're getting that good, healthy sleep that they need. So here is a little video. It's about 4 minutes from Dan Siegel. We actually going to reference him a few more times, and I have a picture of the cover of one of his books. He's a great resource, and he's going to break down some of that science behind a really fun term called neuroplasticity. And he's going to talk about why and how our teens' relationships are really built on connections. So I do need to do a quick stop share. And then go to something else, and then share my screen again. And then I'll play this video for you.
The adolescent period is absolutely amazing. People often give it a negative approach, saying, oh, it's a time where adolescents are going to lose their mind, or they're just immature, or raging hormones drive them crazy. These are all not only wrong, but they're myths that mislead us and actually disempower us. Whether we're adults or adolescents, they actually give us the wrong message, and they make it so there's nothing we can do. So what is actually the truth? The truth is that instead of raging hormones, what's happening is we have remodeling in the brain in ways we never predicted. We now understand two big things are happening in the brain, things you as an adult can support adolescents in developing well, and if you're an adolescent, you actually can use this to help your brain grow in an optimal way. What are those two things? The brain is pruning itself. So imagine that in childhood, you're growing like a tree and establishing all these branches and all these leaves are growing. In the brain, that means connections among the basic cell, the neuron, called synapses, are being established, and you're soaking in the knowledge of the world, and that's beautiful. The tree is just growing, growing, growing. But then what happens, that surprised everyone, is the brain begins to prune itself. You start carving away some of those leaves, some of the smaller branches, even some of the larger branches. And the reason for the pruning is to specialize the brain. While the child is developing in ways that are really generalized, learning everything they can about everything they can, an adolescent is going to begin to find their passion, to actually find things they like, things they really love doing, and to drive their development in that way. So pruning is actually a use it or lose it principle underneath it. That if you don't use something, you're going to lose it. So if you like sports or like dancing or like music, do those things so you continue to establish those circuits. The second thing that happens in the remodeling adolescent brain is myelin formation. Myelin is a healthy sheath that allows connected neurons to communicate with each other in a much more effective way. How? It's 100 times faster, the signal that's sent down a neuron to communicate with another neuron, 100 times faster, and after it fires off, it's 30 times shorter the resting period that happens. 30 times 100 is 3,000. So when you put down myelin, you've made your neurons communicate 3,000 times more effectively. That's a great thing. Now, the great thing, too, is that you as an adolescent can actually use the focus of your attention to be aware of your emotions, aware of other people, to be engaging in activities, to be doing things with your thoughts that actually reinforce the parts of your brain you want to hold on to. So the good news about the remodeling story is that a field called neuroplasticity, how the brain responds to experience, shows us that what you do with your mind can change the activity and therefore the structure of your brain. So if you then come up with the statement that the ultimate goal of brain remodeling is to make an integrated brain, to differentiate areas, that's the pruning, and myelinate them, that's the linkage. When you increase differentiation and linkage, you make the brain more integrated. And an integrated brain is the pathway toward well-being. And you can do mind-sight exercises. These are exercises that increase insight, empathy, and integration. And if you do them as an adolescent, and you can also do them as an adult, you'll actually increase the integration of your brain as your brain is growing, not just during adolescence, but throughout the lifespan. And what's the outcome of integration? When integration is made visible, it's kindness and compassion. And so what we see through adolescent development is that our relationships become built on connections that are deep and filled with honoring each other's vulnerability, that's kindness, and supporting connections that are compassionate, filled with a sense of caring about other people and wanting to help them. This is the kind of world we can build as we move through life and support each other in our development.
So thank you for watching that. Were there any questions or thoughts? Can I turn that? I apologize. I'm just seeing it. It was turned up as much as I could, and I do apologize, but we did just include in the chat a link to that video if you would like to watch it again later on, and it'll be available in the recording that we have of this. Any other questions or thoughts on the video? Dan Siegel, he has a lot of really interesting information out there. That was a fun noise.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me all right? Fantastic.
The video started playing again. All right, let me go back to our presentation here. I'll start sharing the screen again. Normally, we like to try to embed those, but that one is not embeddable. So, moving on from brain development. So that was just giving us a little bit of background information there about what's going on in our teen brains. Now the question I have for you folks is, what do you think is the percentage of high school students in Penobscot County that have had a drink in the past 30 days? Let me see if I can find, there's our poll. All right, awesome. And you have 4 options there. There is one correct option. I'll give another few seconds. Okay. So here we have the poll here from our parents in the audience. They believe that 48.4% of high school students in Penobscot County have had a drink in the past 30 days. We had 2 that guessed that. We had 1 that guessed 22.9%. So the actual answer to this is 19.3. So a lot of times what we find is that sometimes our perception of use is a little bit higher than actual use. The metric that was used on this is actually from the Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey, which is put out to the schools every 2 years, and it gets very rich data. So they actually have something, they have measurement tools and survey tools that they use with elementary. Sometimes it's talking with parents, sometimes it's working with like upper elementary and middle school. We get really rich middle school data, we get really rich high school data. So in public health, we're using this metric as a thought about what is current use. This data, the 19.3%, is from the 2019 Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey. And the purpose of that survey is to assess the health status of our Maine youth, as well as looking at what are some of those positive and negative attitudes and behaviors and how they can influence healthy development. There is a lot of data that they're collecting, not just about drinking. They're also talking about tobacco use, seatbelt use, how many fruits and vegetables you're eating every day. These pieces of data can be used throughout schools and in our community organizations and our state agencies to plan and evaluate programs and to provide some basis for our grant applications. We use it here in our office all the time. And it's put on by a collaboration between Department of Health and Human Services, Maine Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and the Department of Education. And actually in the chat, I'm gonna link a little frequently asked questions about the Maine Integrated Health Survey. It's kind of a really good rundown of if you have questions about the validity of the data, how it's collected, how much, what is the number of students, basic, that sort of thing. It's a really good resource. If you're a school or community partner, looking at this can give you some really good insight. You can't always drill down to school specific unless you're the administrator of that school. You can look at county specific data. But it kind of gives us a good idea, gives us some good health trends. And a lot of times when we're talking about perception of use, we do tend to trend on the higher thought. We think a lot more teens are using than what actually are. So why are teens using substances? Those that do, what is the reason? Remembering that teens' brains are really wired for that risk and reward, fitting in and socializing, and then sometimes it's that life transitions and emotions that can lead to some use. It can be about feeling like an outsider and longing to be included by others. That's pretty pronounced in our teen years. If the kids that your teen wants to be friends with, if they're hanging out and they're using substances, your teen might feel like they need to participate as well, or they risk feeling left out, ostracized, kind of that cancel culture type thing. Some teens see substance use as an easy path to making friends, fitting in, being accepted by the right crowd. And some teens use to overcome insecurities. Maybe they're letting their guard down a little bit to feel a little bit more socially confident. Those substances might help them feel like they're maybe a little bit more connected and open with others. In addition to these really obvious risks, it can lead to teens feeling like the substance use is necessary to achieve that certain level of interaction. So all of these things combined can really lead to some more higher risk use. Thinking also with that teenage brain development and what they're thinking. When they become better at thinking abstractly, big picture thinking, okay, what do they think of me? Their social anxiety may be increasing because now they're able to consider themselves in the eyes of somebody else. And we know that in particular, that peer approval has been shown to be a very highly rewarding thing for our teenage brain, which again might be why teens are more likely to take risks when their peers are around them. Remembering, and this is the same as when we were all teens, they're really concerned with looking cool. Maybe it's the latest New Kids on the Block jacket, maybe it's the latest iPhone, who knows what that flavor of the year or decade is, but they really want to seem cool. They want to be cool in the eyes of their peers. This really isn't about brain research. This is just about our real life experience. We know that our friends and our peer groups with our teens provide opportunities to learn some new skills such as negotiating, compromise, group planning. These are all really good adult social skills when they're in a safe setting, and we really want to encourage those safe settings. And sometimes our teens are not very good at compromise, good planning, letting others lead, and how they follow in a really productive, safe way. So even if all they're doing is sitting around with their friends, hopefully they're learning some of those really important life adult skills in the meantime in a really safe place to do it with their peers. Sometimes we do know that teens are using substance because what can seem like a really normal life transition can cause some extra stress or emotional distress. Sometimes it's coming from a place of emotional or psychological pain. So we have periods of change and transition in teens' lives. Maybe they've moved, maybe their parents are divorcing. Puberty just kind of blows their mind. Maybe they're changing schools. When we have this whole like quarantine COVID layer over everything, that can cause a lot of upheaval and stress, leading to everybody, not just teens. Even adults in our lives are having to deal with this. They're attempting to find some comfort and some solace in maybe substances or alcohol or drugs. This goes for the adults in our life also. So looking at loneliness, low self-esteem, anybody with depression or anxiety or under any other mental health issues, this can commonly be associated with teen substance use. They don't necessarily cause the teen substance use, but it can be a contributing factor. So what are the effects of using substances? Moving beyond the why, what happens to our teens? It's easy to recognize some of the more obvious risks when we're talking about drug and alcohol use. Something that we can see the negative consequences of, like a car accident or an injury or addiction, but sometimes it's less obvious to see the impact that our substance use can have on the still developing teen brain. Consider this as like a little metaphor here, like we're building a house. First, the foundation is poured. So we have our foundation, then we need to start building up on that, like our framing, our wiring, and our plumbing. The brain develops in a similar way, with a foundation being poured before birth and getting harder during that early years of childhood. Like we had a really good foundation, good hard setting to start building the framing on. Adolescence is that next time of really rapid brain development where the brain's framing, the wiring becomes more efficient, and the brain develops those skills for focus, how to prioritize, and our problem solving. So when we start adding alcohol or other substances, this can lead to some damages in the brain's wiring, increasing the likelihood of learning difficulties, some physical health problems, some mental health problems during the teen years that can lead beyond that into our adulthood. So just like a house is still perfectly functional with a cracked foundation and faulty wiring, so is the human brain, but neither is optimal. We want to have the best start in both our house and our brain to get the biggest bang for our buck, to be the healthiest that we can be leading on into our adulthood lives. Also understanding that many experts believe that most anyone can become addicted to a substance. However, most people who try them don't automatically go to heavy use or addiction. But we do need to caution, especially our teens, that using any substance during that teen and young adult year is a concern. Again, that human brain continues to develop. We need to have this critical point of focus to be healthy and to not have any added problems put into the mix. Substance use during these years creates potential for a variety of negative effects. And we've learned by talking with people who do have a substance use disorder or addiction that 90% of them started using in their teen years. So setting that problem up in their teens is following them into adulthood. So some things do make us more vulnerable to addiction. Number one is if we have a family history of addiction. And I think it's really important to be honest with our teens. If they have an immediate family member, parent, grandparent, aunt or uncle, brother or sister that has a history of substance use disorder or addiction, that we're really honest with them about that so that they know how their own body and their own biology is working so that they can make the safest and healthiest choices for themselves. Also, we know another thing that makes people more vulnerable to addiction is the age of first use. So starting alcohol or other substance use at an early age is a very strong and consistent predictor of the increased risk of addiction. Am I going, are we at a good pace? Am I going too fast for anyone? Just want to do a quick temperature check. Can't always see the chat either, so. Okay, thank you, Megan. I appreciate the thumbs up. Oh, here's my chat. All right, good pace, thank you. All right, so first looking at alcohol, we know that alcohol does make safe decision-making more difficult for young people because it is blocking that part of the brain that controls judgment. That part is still developing. So it's also going to create some changes in our brain's reward center. Your brain likes to feel good, and it's gonna make those neural pathways that feel good the strongest. So if we start changing that with substances and chemicals, it can get a little wonky in there. So we know that the earlier they start using, the more vulnerable they are to addiction. We all have that trigger point. We all have our trigger point to addiction. Some of us, by virtue of our biology, are closer to that trigger point than others. What brings us closer to our trigger point is how many high-risk choices that we are making. High-risk choices are things like drinking more than the standard amount of safe drinks that cause intoxication. That brings us closer to our trigger point. Adding in other substances that cause intoxication and impairment. That's the problem here, brings us closer to our trigger point of addiction. Alcohol is that central nervous system depressant. We all are, I'm sure, familiar. We've seen this going on in our lives. We know what happens when people drink too much alcohol. We see it in the media all the time. We see the consequences of high-risk use in the newspapers on a daily basis. So remembering that our young people's brains are not fully developed until they're reaching their mid to late 20s. So any drinking while the brain is still developing can be problematic. Regardless of our age, we need to remember that alcohol does lower inhibitions, it impairs judgment, it impairs coordination, and it can also increase our incidence of aggressive or violent acts. Thinking about kind of what's going on with our kids' brains, that prefrontal cortex is not fully developed. This is where they understand like pre-planning, consequences, that sort of thing. If that part of the brain is not fully developed, they're not seeing ahead at what the consequences could be. Also remembering, when we're talking about binge drinking, this is having 4 or 5 drinks on one occasion. That can cause alcohol poisoning or even death. Again, it's a central nervous system depressant. It slows everything down. Remembering that we do know about 16 million Americans do misuse or are addicted to alcohol. Alcohol is legal. It is legal for adults. It's widely available. And it is something that is very normalized in our society, and the perception of harm isn't always that high. Prolonged heavy use of alcohol can lead to addiction, also known as alcohol use disorder. It can lead to liver and heart disease, other health consequences such as a weakened immune system, and an increased risk for developing certain types of cancer. So moving on next to cannabis. This may be used by young people to help decrease stress, anxiety. However, we're finding that this early use really can decrease a young person's and their body's ability to calm and relax on its own without that extra substance. Use is increasing, and we are seeing increases in youth rates. I believe the 2017 Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey for our Penobscot County teens put us at 19% past 30-day use. Our 2019 data put us at 22% for high school students past 30-day use. So we are seeing use rates among our young people increasing. We have a little bit more normalization. We do have adult retail use cannabis at this time. So sometimes People are not always seeing some of the health risks and the brain development risks that can come along with some of this blossoming normalization that is happening now. With all these changes that are currently underway, we're seeing a lot more availability of cannabis use, and some of those beliefs that they're fairly or relatively harmless, they're going to overshadow the acknowledgement of there are some known risks to cannabis use, especially for young people. Thinking about the way the brain's reward system works, people who use cannabis may start experiencing things that their brain really, really likes. It can lead to problems later on. So people who are using cannabis may experience that pleasant euphoria or a sense of relaxation, which is why maybe some of our young people are using it to decrease stress and relax. Sometimes they're going to experience a heightened sensory perception, increased appetite, some of those other things. But we have to remember those negative short-term effects include our disrupted learning and memory. So big problems, especially when you're trying to learn a new skill, you're trying to learn how to be a safe and functional adult as a young person. It can cause difficulty with thinking and problem solving. So all of those things that, again, go into healthy brain development, if we're doing things in our brain to alter that, is going to cause problems later on. We can have a distorted sense of perception. So what we see, what we hear, what we touch, our sense of time can be distorted, and we could have a loss of motor coordination, an increased heart rate, and it can increase anxiety. So these effects are even greater if we see somebody combining marijuana use with other substances such as alcohol. Really, again, understanding here that cannabis use in young people can increase the risk of anxiety, depression, and these things that they call amotivational syndrome, which is characterized by that diminished ability to carry out long-term plans. So they're not thinking long-term, sense of apathy, they're kind of like, whatever. Decreased attention to appearance and behavior, so they're not kind of looking and acting like they used to. And at decreased ability, this is a really key point here, is that decreased ability to concentrate for long periods of time. So these changes, not just seeing problems at home, but also could lead to poor performance in school, or if they have any type of job, any type of training that they're doing, can lead to problems with that. Research does tell us that teens who use cannabis regularly are more likely, again, to have those learning difficulties, memory issues, and lower math and reading scores, which are really key with some of those successes in the academic world. Now looking at prescription drugs, and I really want to be clear here, we're not talking about somebody using a prescription for prescribed reasons. We're really talking about those people who are using prescription drugs for non-prescribed reasons. Understanding that prescription drugs are work with the brain and a body to treat medical problems when taken correctly. And please remember also, there are some of these prescription medications that come with a warning that say, do not operate heavy machinery until you know how you're going to react to this drug. I don't know about you guys, but when I hear heavy machinery, I think of a forklift. And I'm like, oh, who's driving a forklift? No, they mean like a car. Like, don't drive a car until you know how this is going to react with your body. So really understanding that when there is a prescription medication, it needs to be taken as prescribed, because we know that taking more or using the prescription in the wrong way can lead to bigger problems, such as addiction, such as memory problems, injuries, altered sense of consciousness, all of those extra things. It's, again, going to start affecting your brain, similar to the way alcohol can affect your brain, similar to the way our non-prescription drugs, such as cocaine or heroin, can just work with the reward center in your brain. Again, your brain likes to be happy, so it's going to do whatever it can, and it's going to make you want to do whatever you can to make your brain happy. So if we're changing the neural pathways, if we're changing our reward center, your brain is going to want to seek this sort of thing out. That's when we're starting to have that issue with addiction. Some people misuse certain types of medication to get that high, to feel a certain way. Sometimes they're just using to cope or manage with the stress in their lives. There's a whole variety of things here. The big thing to remember is If your teen has a prescription, make sure they are using it as prescribed. If you have a prescription in your house, we always encourage that there's super safe storage, that you keep them in a place where your teens can't access them. So usually the medicine cabinet isn't the right place for it. Even keeping count of how many pills you have and how many pills you're supposed to have. If they have a prescription, keeping your pill counts. Just making sure you're monitoring what is going on with any prescription drugs that are in the house. When they're used as prescribed, they can be life-saving. When they're not used as prescribed, a lot more problems can go on. Something I do want to touch on real quick, even back with alcohol and cannabis, is that concept of safe storage. So this kind of plays into one of our next pieces, but I do want to address it here. We always encourage parents, especially when you have young people in your homes, that you keep track of what you have and you keep things locked up if it's not something that they're supposed to have. So for example, in our house, we do have 2 adults that are of legal drinking age that do like to consume beer every once in a while. We actually have a locking fridge in our garage. Our children do not have access to the keys that open that fridge, and we keep track of what's in there and we do keep it locked up. Same thing, if you have a liquor cabinet, keep your stuff locked up. If you have cannabis users in your home, this is becoming more and more common. We do encourage having safe, locked up storage, and don't have your teens have access to that situation, not have access to those products. So again, just an extra key layer in having safe storage here in your homes for all substances. So our final poll question popping up on the screen. So the question, it's a little wonky, and I'm going to read it out loud to you. What do you think is the percentage of high school students in Penobscot County that believed their parents would feel it was wrong for their teen to have 1 or 2 drinks of an alcoholic beverage nearly every day? So this is parental perception of harm. What our kids think about what their parents think. It's a little muddy. See some answers coming in. Awesome. So we had our guesses of 77.4% of teens believe that their parents would think it was wrong. Actually, it is the highest number. So 94.2% of our teens in Penobscot County believe that their parents don't want them drinking alcohol. That's a really, really good thing. When we believe that when our young people believe that their parents think about this and care about it, that's going to lead to lower use rates. That's a really good metric right there. We really like to see that number. So last month, the Opportunity Alliance, which is this program out of Southern Maine, put out this parenting webinar. And I'm going to tell you, I completely took this from them. I loved it. I thought it was such an easy way to share what we can do as parents to have some tools to base our conversations with our kids. So we've learned about this brain development. We've learned about some consequences of use. Now let's look at what are some tools that we can have in our little toolbox as parents, how to prevent this stuff from happening. So we're going to build our strong foundation, our good tools. We're going to use the CARE model. And again, this is from the Opportunity Alliance, and it just captures it so well. So our first letter here is our C. So you can see there, that's my 2 guys. They have matching shirts and pants on. I don't know how we ended up getting them matching pants, but my son, he really just, sometimes he rolls his eyes at us, and sometimes he really embraces our corniness and our parentingness. So lean into that. Show interest in your teen's interests. Learn about their world. Try to be part of their world. Really lean into, you're the weird parent and that's okay. if they think that, it makes it okay for them to be okay with it. They're not going to battle you on it anymore, like, oh my goodness, you're so weird. Why are you? I'm not weird. I'm like a normal parent. No, embrace the weird. They're going to be okay with it. Maybe if they're really good at something, ask for their help with it. Show that you know they're going to be the experts in some things. Remembering that teens' brains work amazingly faster than our brains. Their brains are wired for technology. They can figure it out very, very quickly, much more quickly than we can, even if we don't want to admit it. So really embrace that. Say, can you help me set this up? Can you show me how to do a TikTok video? Can you show me whatever this next social media platform is? Really embrace their expert level knowledge in things that are technology. Maybe it's gaming, maybe it's card gaming or those mythical worlds, whatever it is, have them teach you. They like to be the experts, and then it's something that they can hold over you. Have a special show or a podcast that you listen or watch together. Right now we started watching Psych. It's something my partner and I loved to watch back when it was on. We've introduced our teen to it. He's really embracing the corniness and the cheesiness of Psych, and it's awesome to rewatch it again. Communicate with them in their world. If they like to communicate through texting and memes, communicate that way. It's going to be easier for them to accept the information that you're trying to share with them, and they get to keep it and they can lock it away in their little phone there. Also, something I always like to share with parents is use the car to your advantage. So get your teen in the car. That's a great place to have some really meaningful conversations. And no eye contact is required. You can just face forward. You can't go anywhere. You can't escape. And sometimes awkward silences are expected. So again, the car is a great place to have some really meaningful conversations. The A here is appreciate. Really just understanding you have the kid that you have, not the kid that you want. Appreciate who they are, who they're becoming, appreciate their efforts and their challenges. Also, try not to minimize their struggle, because what they're feeling is what they're feeling, and it is so incredibly real to them. Really acknowledge that and appreciate where they're at. Appreciate any progress that they've made on something, or the process that they're using to get progress. Really appreciate those small moments. Sometimes it's they remembered to unload the dishwasher, where that's always been something really hard for them to remember. Really make a big deal about that. Appreciate it. They're building those pathways. They're going to remember how they felt, and they're going to want to feel that way again. Remembering to help your teen regulate. Try to regulate the brain flip. You want to stay here. You want to not keep them here. Remembering, is this a problem, or is this a problem that I have? Is it a problem with me? Talk when they are here. You're not going to be able to give them any information. You're not going to get them to change their behavior when they're here. Get them back here. Remembering that, yeah, it is frustrating, and why you need them to stop doing what they're doing or what it looks like. Talk about healthy coping strategies. Okay, you know what? We can't talk about this right now. Let's just both take a time out. Telling you, parent time out, beautiful thing. Use them to your advantage. And our last one is to empathize. Sometimes our kids just need to vent. Sometimes they don't need us to come to their rescue and to fix things. They just need us to listen while they vent. And sometimes you need to say to your kid, okay, it sounds like there's a lot going on here. Do you need my help with something, or do you want to just word vomit at me? Acknowledge that. Remember, we all have hard days. Even as parents, we have hard days too. They're dealing with all of the same things that we're dealing with. They have hard days. They have that social rejection, which for a teen who thrives on that peer relationship building, social rejection is devastating. We really want to acknowledge and empathize with that. Remembering that the person with the problem gets to decide how big it is, not minimizing something because for them, it is really big. Remembering that everybody, whether it's us as parents or our teens, we really want to feel truly understood and how that makes us feel. So how can we do that for our teens? It helps us feel less lonely. It helps us feel less anxious when we know that other people have gone through this also and that they know how it feels. And they're not just, oh, you're fine, it's not that big of a deal. No, to them it is a big deal. Acknowledge and empathize with that. Sometimes we just need to embrace the suck and get a fuzzy blanket and sit with each other on the couch, and that's okay. Do that with your kids. Kids need hugs. It can, for some reason, when our kids get, I think it's when they get taller than us, but sometimes there's like that 13, 14 range, we stop hugging our kids, and I'm telling you, hugs are a key to that connection with our kids. Sometimes you get the awkward side hug. Sometimes you get the full-blown Blair hug. Sometimes they want to wrestle. Embrace the wrestle. They need that sensory input. They need to feel that connectedness. But remembering, hug your kids. Remember to ask before you hug your kids. Always get consent because it's modeling that really healthy behavior. And when you can, humor is an amazing tool when applied correctly. It can really boost and strengthen that connection with our teens. It gives us something in common. We all like to laugh. So again, really, how do you bring humor into situations that can use humor? Sometimes we just need to laugh at ourselves. So again, now we have that foundation. Let's build some more framework. We need to talk about building our house when we're talking about what it means to talk to our kids about preventing substance use. And I apologize, I'm looking at our time. We might go a little over, but I am gonna try to get this in the time. Remembering that teens are much more likely to follow the limits and rules that are set, that they help create them. So work with your teen to figure out what you can both work with. This isn't just about preventing substance use, it's about following a curfew, what you expect from school, what you expect from friends, from video gaming, everything. Work together. Include consequences. Have those clear expectations about what it means to be in the rules. Don't use something, I hate the phrase be nice. And when my kids, when we're talking about expectations and they say, well, I have to be nice. No, be nice is kind of a cop-out. It doesn't really mean anything. Be really specific. Be nice means we don't have hands-on. We say please and thank you, and we talk in a kind volume with each other. That's what's being nice. So work together to build the rules. Be very specific and clear about the rules that you're building. Then start including those consequences. So your kids need to know what happens if they step over the line. Otherwise, why would anybody pay attention to the limits? Why would anybody pay attention to the line? Your teen needs to know what happens if they go over. Help them, have them help you define the consequences. Some questions to ask when you're doing this: does the punishment fit the crime? So grounding for a week might be too harsh of a punishment when they're 20 minutes late for dinner, but reasonable if they miss curfew by 2 hours. So think about, does the punishment fit the crime? Can you actually enforce the consequence? So can you actually take your kid's phone if that's your only source of communication with them? Can you ground them and they can't leave the house for the week if they have a part-time job? What does this look like? Let's say they have to work late. You can't have an 8 o'clock bedtime. So make sure it fits the crime. Isn't it forcible? And is it clear? So something like, make sure you're saying for every 30 minutes that you're late, you lose the right to use the family car for a day. Make a very clear consequence. You need to enforce limits and acknowledge success, understanding that kids make mistakes. Parents make mistakes, but kids make mistakes too. That's how they learn. That's how they're building their brain. So when your teen makes a mistake, they break a rule, it's going to upset you. That's understandable. So we need to make sure we really keep our emotions in check. Avoid making our empty threats, because you'll lose credibility with teens real quickly if you don't follow through and make an empty threat. Sometimes it means we need to take some time to cool off. Again, keep ourselves in this brain, not this brain. And we need to explain what our feelings are, what the problem is here, and what you're suggesting to fix the problem. We also need to acknowledge when our teens are doing well, kind of those caught being good things, which most of the time they're going to be doing really well. So make sure you're putting a lot of positive stuff in there. If your kids are only hearing from you when it's a negative or a problem, it's not going to be as important. If they're hearing positive, good messaging with correction when correction is needed, it's much more likely to stick. We also need to make sure we're monitoring our behavior. Now, this might sound really like big brothery, sinistery, but it's actually a really simple idea of knowing where your kid is, knowing their friends, and knowing what they're up to. So when we're monitoring, it's really as simple as you know where your teen is, both physically and virtually. So sometimes this means we need to be keeping an eye on what they're doing in social media, what they're doing when they're online. Have some technology knowledge so that you can check these things. Also talk about, you know, I'm concerned about this. I'm not trying to break your privacy, but as a young person in my house, I have a responsibility to make sure that you are safe and healthy. This is part of it. Set those expectations beforehand. Have clear and concise rules about what is okay, what isn't okay, and be really clear and concise on the consequence. Get to know your kids' friends, both real life friends and online friends. Know who they're gaming with. See if they can, a really fun thing I'm just learning about is this whole concept of Twitch, where you can watch people play video games. That sounds like torture to me. I cannot stand watching people play video games. Like, why? Apparently it's a big thing. You can do it on Twitch. You can see some famous people on there. See, hey guys, why don't you hook yourself up to Twitch? I'd love to see you guys play. And that way you can kind of see and hear who they're socializing with in that online world. And it makes you seem like the cool parent because you're on Twitch. Discuss things. If you see something come up in a text messaging and you're like, huh, what's up with this? Can you explain, like, is everything okay with this friend? Are there things that are concerning? What's going on? Have conversations. Know who your friends are. Know who your kids' friends are. Number 3 is find out how your teen plans to spend their day. Sometimes if you're looking for dinner table conversation, ask, hey, what are you excited about tomorrow? Like, is something going on? Do you have some big plans? What's going on in your world? Like, what are you going to be doing? Know how they're spending their day. What we're finding is, and I'm sure you guys are all seeing it also, is our social distancing and our the more time we're spending at home, sometimes we still have parents that are working outside the home a lot, and our kids are having a lot of unsupervised time. Give them, I know in our house we do job tickets, so they have certain things that they have to do every day. We have a reward attached to it. Even my almost 14-year-old loves to pick prizes from the prize box. So that's part of the job ticket thing. They get to pick prizes if their number is picked. It's a whole system. But know how they spend their day. Give them productive, safe things to do even. Really, really encouragement. And it gives you a chance to catch them being good. And number 3 and number 4 kind of go in together. Limit your child's time without adult supervision. Again, that what used to be after school hours used to be a really risky time for tweens and teens to be on their own. We would kind of see a lot of problems there. So if you're not there to monitor it, anytime outside of this really weird COVID time, try to get your kids involved in things as much as possible. If you can't, and right now we can't, check in with them periodically. Don't always have it on the same schedule. check in with them periodically throughout the afternoon just to see what they're up to, how everything's going, if there's any problems. Number 5 is know the apps and the technology that your teens are using. Get familiar with them, know what they do, know what they don't do, and also be on them yourself. So I know we have a social media contract in our house where when my son turned 13, he got Instagram on his phone. He got a phone, he got Instagram. But the key was he had to be friends with me and I had to be friends with him on Instagram. So get really familiar, be able to monitor any in-app purchases, have some passwords on there so they can't just spend whatever. I know, like, we just got an Xbox, we're really late to the game. It all comes to my email, so I've caught my son on a number of occasions purchasing something, and I'll call him up and like, nope, that's getting canceled because you didn't ask first. That was a clear rule in our agreement. That's a consequence. It gets taken off. And then number 6, and until I was developing this, I didn't really think much about this rule of monitoring, but it makes sense. Know how much money your kid has and how that money is being spent. So maybe your kid has a job. Doesn't mean that you have to be on their bank account, but you kind of have an idea about what's coming in and out. Understanding, like, sometimes they're going to come home with a weird set of headphones with a microphone for their gaming headset. All right, where'd you get that? Oh, I bought it from my friend. Okay, like, how much did that cost? Where did you get the money? Just have an idea about what's going on there. This also gives you a really good chance to do some like safe, good money practice things where, no, if you have a job, some of your money should go into savings and start building some of those money skills that sometimes we find with our young adults is missing. Now, what are the experts saying? Now, the experts here, these are our teens. So it's really important here that they have a voice, that they know that parents and adults are listening to them. So these were collected in a variety of different ways. So one teen said that the best thing about this social distancing and all this time at home is, you know, every night at dinner, we sit down to dinner as a family and we can have a vent session. We can just word vomit all of the problems and complaints that we have, and we usually end up laughing about it because it seems so silly looking back, or that's the best way that we can deal with this. We can just laugh about it because what else are we going to do? Another teen said, be open to compromise. It doesn't always have to be your way or the highway. Sometimes kids do have really good ideas and they have value to insert into a household. Be open to that. See what they have to say and how you can work some of those ideas into your family. Sometimes we want to be alone, and that's okay. There's nothing nefarious there. Sometimes they just want to be alone, and that's okay. Again, you have those strong monitoring pieces that you've already done. You've had the conversations about what your expectations are of your teens, what's okay, what's not okay, what's allowed, what's not allowed. If it's safe for them, let them be alone, and that's really okay. If it starts to get problematic and you're noticing that it's all the time, then kind of have some conversations about what's going on here, but sometimes it's okay. And then I feel like a really big one, and I know in our house sometimes this is that knee-jerk reaction is taking the phone. Please understanding that unless they've done something really, really unsafe or problematic, don't do that, because right now for some of them that's the only connection that they have to their friends and to their world. It's the only thing left that feels somewhat normal, and normal is a really funny term. So please, this is from a teen, don't take their phone away unless it's really, really necessary. So remembering again, we are so important, and our teens know that we're important, and they really do like us. Even if they roll their eyes so much that they could get a gold medal in the Olympics with it, they really, really do like us, and they think highly of us, and they want to spend time with us, and they do care what we think. So again, you are probably one of the most influential people that your teen will come across. So be a good role model. be a good listener, be empathetic, be understanding. Think about how you're dealing with your own stress and life difficulties, because your teen is trying to figure out their healthy coping mechanisms. They need to experience that. They need to see what that looks like as an adult. Our teens are watching us, and we need to make sure that what they're seeing is good problem solving, understanding that no, life isn't always great, but we can figure it out. We can do something that works. We just, sometimes it takes a little time to get there. And acknowledge that, you know what, it's hard. Being a parent is hard. Being a parent right now when nothing else is normal for our teens and they're missing some of those like rites of passage, some of the things that are really important to them, it's hard. And I just want to acknowledge that. And I want to thank you guys for taking part in this, because this is taking time away from everything else that you could be doing right now. So I appreciate you spending this time with us here tonight, and I appreciate your heart, and I see you, and I'm right there with you, and I will form this alliance with you. We've got it. We'll figure something out here. So like I said, I did want to share some resources with you guys. I got a lot of my information from drugfree.org. It's really comprehensive. It goes from prevention to treatment to recovery, from tweens to elementary school kids to young adults, even your adult children. If you're looking for resources on how to help and support them, drugfree.org is a great place. The parentupkc.com is a really cool messaging campaign that I found about, it's keeping children safe from the harms of alcohol and other drug use. It is rooted in, here in the prevention world, we love this, evidence-based research and prevention. We love those words. So they're using some very rich research and information and science to demonstrate how using substances can be really harmful to the developing adolescent brain. Another really good resource. I put a couple books up there. If you've never had a chance to listen to Ross Green talk, he worked with a program here in Maine and did a conference called Parenting with Love and Logic. So he just has some great information about how to connect with your kid. And I put up the book up there. It's kind of based on some teens. He also does a book called Raising the Explosive Child that I've found really invaluable. He has a great bunch of information, Parenting with Love and Logic, just talking about connectedness. And also, the gentleman that did the video that I shared with you, Dan Siegel, he put this book up there called Brainstorm. Another really, really good book. Talks about that emotional frenzy that has teen brains just going in a nuts, and how do we as parents deal with that, and what can we do to really kind of get teens in a better place, and how we can be really purposeful with our parenting. Some really great resources. Before we leave here tonight, I do want to, in the chat, there is going to be a link for a Google form. I'm going to just ask if you can fill that out. We would greatly appreciate it, because it's going to help guide our work even more. And we're going to be able to really make sure that we're doing everything that our community needs in a way that's really productive for them. Megan asked, how would this recording be shared? So once we get it all set up and make sure that it recorded well enough, we're going to share it both on our website at bangorpublichealth.org. It's going to be, we'll post on our Facebook page that we put it out there, and it's going to be linked to our YouTube channel. So you can search YouTube, Bangor Public Health. It'll come up. Once we get it up there, it'll be available on our YouTube channel. It'll sit on our website along with other resources and information. And periodically, we're going to be sharing stuff on our social media and Facebook page. If at any time you need to get more information about this, that's a really good way to access us, is through our social media. My email is also listed in that chat box there. You can email me at any time, and I can share any of the resources I had here tonight. We love to share resources. Like I said, I used a lot of what the Opportunity Alliance put out there. Across our prevention world, we love to share this. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to put out useful stuff that more people can have access to. So we always encourage sharing, and thank you for asking where that is. I forgot to mention that. So like I said, there is that link to the Google form in there. I please encourage you strongly to fill that out. We do really appreciate it, and we will take that to heart. And if there's anything else you have questions, please email me. Please stay tuned. This is a whole new world that we are approaching, and the way we're doing prevention in Penobscot County. And we want to make sure we're adding value to what is already really, really busy for people. So we're going to be trying to do this once a month on a variety of topics. And we encourage you to use our Facebook page to gain access to that. We're going to be sharing it as much as possible there. And it's going to be on a variety of prevention topics. So I think we have some adult alcohol use information coming up. We're going to be talking about how to access treatment, perhaps. We have a really amazing overdose prevention program going on here in our office right now. So we're going to be able to have access to those trainings also. So I encourage you, look at our website, bangorpublichealth.org, and look at our Facebook page that's linked on there, and it'll give you some really good resources. And share this out widely. We encourage that. We are going to be doing a social media recruitment blitz, I think, with some rewards here at some point. So it might be worth your while to follow us and to keep an eye on that, because it could mean money or like gift cards or something that can be used for appropriate purchases. Need to put that out there. So if there's no other comments, I do thank you guys for spending the evening with us. I hope you found this valuable. I hope you were able to pick up some tools about how to work with our teens, because they are these most amazing, wonderful, scary little creatures. But they are really kind of awesome, and I don't find them as scary as I used to, and I hope you don't either. So thank you. Have a good rest of your evening. Please fill out the feedback form, and we hope to see you again soon.